Okay, I'm going to continue going through my Captain Marvel Adventure CGC graded collection. This time I have a 9.2, issue 118 with 15 graded copies, and there are two 9.2s, so this is tied for highest grade. There is something down here, something that looks like it's slipped in. I don't think that's part of the comic book. And since this is a Crowley copy, I'm gonna guess that that is a certificate of authentication, which I have one of the comics I have has a certificate of authentication, but it is outside the comic. So that's my guess. This is not the only comic where it looks like something has been slipped in. The cover looks like it's a little bit translucent, but I can't really see what's in there. These are off-white to white pages, and this was published in March 1951. Right, next up, I like this cover, one of my favorite covers. I always like simple covers, and this one is very simple. It's number 112, published in September 1950. There is one 9.2, and this is it. So this stands alone as the highest grade. This is one of my earliest purchases, and I do remember that this was kind of the moment where I was like, man, it doesn't seem to matter if it's a highest grade on the price, because I did not pay a lot for this. I don't know if I have an invoice, but I did not pay a lot for, let me adjust this a little bit, for this comic. It is a Crowley copy. Next up we have issue 87, which has 31 graded CGC copies with one 9.6, two 9.4s, and one 9.2. So this is a fourth highest grade. And we have a John Jari text story by Yando Binder, who is Otto Binder. It's his, I don't know, he used a different name. This was published in October 1948. I'm sorry, this was August 1948. And this is creamed off-white pages and a Crowley copy. And I have to admit that I'm, as a comic book fan for my whole life, or at least since I was a young child, it's humbling to own many of these, particularly the Crowley copies. And Crowley was the publisher of Fawcett when these comics were released, and also some of the highest grades. It is part of history, I would say, and sort of a responsibility on my part to keep these comics protected. This is issue number 34. There are 27 graded CGC copies with two 9.4s and three 9.2s. So this is tied for second best. Otto Binder story, C.C. Beck cover, off-white pages. This was published in March 1944, and it is a Crowley copy, yet another Crowley copy. And I've mentioned in the past that Crowley was keeping, I guess, 2 or 3 copies of every comic they published, presumably for reference material, but apparently he kept them in really good shape. However he was storing them, he did a good job. And in this issue, Captain Marvel visits Oklahoma City. And finally we have, this is number 86, with 18 graded copies, two 9.4s and two 9.2s. I did find the invoice for this one. I paid $345 for it, and it is listed on Comic Price Guide at $420. It was published in July 1948 with cream to off-white pages, another Crowley copy. And it says there is stories by Otto Binder, Marco, and Woolfolk. So, and another appearance by Talkie Tawny, who I particularly enjoy. So I would definitely say anyone who is considering getting into collecting these classic, maybe not Captain Marvel Adventures, but another series, just make sure you're budgeted out. You know, this can be very addictive. I mentioned in another video some fellow who was collecting CGC graded copies of New Mutants, which was a comic from the 80s, and they weren't really worth that much. I mean, if you get a super, super high grade, a 9.8, 9.9, maybe a 10, they could be worth something if you can find a buyer for it. But this guy, just reading his messages on the message board, he clearly had an addiction, and that can be very problematic. So definitely budget yourself out with a hard budget and make sure all your expenses are paid for, that this is absolutely disposable income. And one of the things you need to take care of, particularly if you're pre-retirement, is putting money aside for retirement. For 20 years I've been putting maximum for 401k. So I did all that before I started worrying about whether I'm going to buy some comics or not. So this is the fifth one, and I will show more in future videos.